There's a truth we've been taught to run from, a truth we've been conditioned to fear. It hides in the quiet moments when our chest tightens before we speak our truth, when our hands tremble as we admit we're wrong, and when our hearts race because we're about to be seen, fully seen for who we really are. That truth is this vulnerability is not akeness. It is power, but our world has it all backward. We're taught to armor up, keep smiling, keep cheap tending. We're taught to bury our feelings beneath layers of productivity, perfection, and performance. Somewhere along the line, we learn that be strong means to never break. That to be valuable means to always have it together. And that to be worthy means to never show fear, doubt, or uncertainty. You've been told to suppress it. That trembling in your voice when you speak your truth. That ache in your chest when you share something raw and honest. You've been trained, consciously or unconsciously, to believe that to be strong means to never let them see you sweat, to never show fear, to always have the answer, and to push through no matter what you're feeling inside. Strength, you were told, looks like control. Strength acts like invincibility. But that's a myth, a dangerous one, because the truth is real strength, the kind that builds bridges, changes lives, and moves mountains, begins where you are most afraid in vulnerability. There's nothing weak about standing in front of someone and saying, I'm scared, but I'm still going. There's nothing small about admitting you don't have it all figured out. In fact, it takes far more courage to say, I don't know, than to fake your way through a conversation just to protect your pride. It takes far more guts to say, I'm hurting, than to wear a fake smile and pretend the world isn't crashing down on you. Vulnerability is the invisible armor of the truly brave. It's not loud or boastful, but it is steady. It's the quiet voice inside you that says, anyway. When every fiber of your being is telling you to run and hide, strength is not found in being untouched by life. It's found in how you respond when life touches you in the deepest places, when it cracks you open, when it exposes the rawness of your spirit. And in those moments, when you want to shut down, when you want to retreat, when you feel naked, defenseless, you have a choice. You can either numb out and run, or you can lean in and rise. And if you choose to lean in, to stay with yourself in the fire of healings, to hold space for the truth that you don't have to be perfect to be powerful, something incredible happens. You don't break, you transform. There is a quiet resilience in a person who refuses to armor up, who chooses to be real in a world that rewards the mask. There is a sacred kind of power in the one who admits fear but still acts, who names their pain but still loves, whom's their shame but still stands tall. This is the kind of strength that can't be taught in books or earned through accolades. It's forged in the fires of real life. Through the losses you've carried, the fears you've faced, the doubts you've wrestled with in the dark when no one was watching. Vulnerability gives birth to that kind of strength. Think about the last time someone's honesty moved you. The last time a story, a conversation, or even a tear left you feeling connected and seen. It wasn't because the person was perfect. It was because they were real. They allowed themselves to be known. And in doing so, they allowed you to recognize yourself in them. That's the secret of vulnerability. It's a mirror, and through it, we find each other. We find ourselves. What we often mistake for strength. Emotional detachment, silence, avoidance, pretending is often just fear wearing armor. But fear doesn't make you stronger. It isolates you. It numbs you. It makes you a prisoner of your own aid. Vulnerability, on the other hand, invites healing. It invites others in. It cracks the shell when open so that light can pour through. And that kind of exposure, while terrifying, is what allows us to grow. You can't evolve in hiding. You can't expand when you're closed off. You can't truly love, connect, or live fully when you're behind a wall. People may look at someone who is emotionally open, who speaks from heart, and think they are fragile. But truth is, they are the strongest people in the room. It takes everything inside you to stand with an open heart in a world that so often tries to shut you down. It takes everything to tell when silence would be safer. It takes strength to be soft in a world that tells you to be hard. It takes resilience to be seen when invisibility feels easier. And this strength is not just personal, it's transformational. It's what allows leaders to lead with authenticity. It's what helps families break generational cycles. It's what empowers communities to heal. Vulnerability is the seed of every meaningful conversation, every genuine relationship, every brave act that ever changed a life, because it's only when we're real that others feel permission to be real too. And when we strip away the fear of being judged, we create space for connection, for empathy, for growth, and for change. Perfection has become a prison dressed up look like success. We chase it, idolize it, and let it define our worth. We spend hours curating the image we want the world to see. Flawless, put together, confident, always in control. We hide being filters, masks, and achievements because we think that's what makes us valuable, what makes us lovable, what earns us a seat at the table. But what if the thing we're chasing is the very thing holding us back from true connection, purpose, and power? You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. In fact, trying to be perfect often robs you of the power you're seeking. The most magnetic, impactful people aren't those who have never failed. They're the ones who failed, owned it, grown from it, and kept going. They aren't the ones who everything figured out. They're the ones who show up anyway, questions and all. There is something unforgettable about someone who walks in the room unmasked, unpolished, and unafraid to be exactly who are. Perfection is a performance, and performances are exhausting. They keep us stuck in a cycle of self-doubt, comparison, and fear. We measure ourselves by impossible standards, then beat ourselves up when we fall short. We silence our voices because we're afraid of saying the wrong thing. We delay our dreams because we don't feel ready or good enough. And all the while, we miss opportunities to grow, to lead, to love, and to live fully. Not because we weren't capable, but because we were waiting to be perfect first. But power doesn't live in the polished version of you. It lives in the I-real version of you. The one with flaws, fears, cracks, and complexity. The one who's been through it and kept going. The one who has doubted, stumbled, and risen over and over again. That's where your true power is. Not in the image you present, but in the truth you carry. When you stop trying to be perfect, you start becoming free. Free to speak honestly. Free to take up space. Free to share your story, even the parts you've hidden. Free to show up as are, without apology. And in that freedom, you unlock a deeper of confidence, one that isn't dependent on the approval of others. Because when you know your worth isn't tied to how flawless you appear, you stop living for validation and start in alignment with who you truly are. We often think that being powerful means being untouchable, unbreakable, and immune to failure. But the most powerful people are those who, willing to be seen as they are, they don't hide their mistakes. They use them as lessons. They don't pretend to be fearless. They feel fear and show up anyway. They don't chase perfection. They chase growth, truth, and purpose. There's power in saying, I don't have it all together, but I'm trying. I'm growing. There's power in saying, this is who I am, even if I'm still figuring it out. There's power in embracing the messy, beautiful, unfinished parts of your story. Because where due, you give others permission to do the same. And that's where real connection begins. Not in perfection, but in shared humanity. Think about the last time someone's scorched you deeply. It wasn't because they were flawless. It was because they were honest. It was because they allowed you to see their pain, their joy, their uncertainty, and their truth. It was because they reminded you that you're not alone, that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy. That strength isn't about how polished you look. It's about how real you're willing to be. You don't need to wait until you have all the answers, until the timing is perfect, until you're more confident or more prepared. You are already enough. You are already powerful, not in spite of your imperfections, but because of them. Because your imperfections are not limitations. They are proof that you are human, that you are growing, and that you are showing up for the life you were meant to live. When you let it go the need to be perfect, you reclaim your energy, you reclaim your voice, you reclaim your life, you stop hiding and start living, you stop performing and start creating, you stop holding back and start rising in your own authentic power. We live in a world flooded with connection, devices in our hands, notifications on our screens, the constant hum of messages, updates, and online presence. Yet despite all this connection, many people feel more alone than ever. That's because real connection doesn't come from being seen online. It comes from being known. And you can't truly be known if you're not being real. Authenticity is the bridge to meaningful connection, and vulnerability is the price of crossing that bridge. It's easy to show people the version of ourselves we've polished, edited, and curated. It's much harder to let someone see our uncertainty, our fears, and the parts of our story that don't have a clean ending. But it's in those honest, raw moments that true connection is born. You can sit across from someone every day, talk about the weather, your job, the news, and still feel completely disconnected. You can laugh with people, work with people, even live with people, and still feel unseen. That's because surface-level conversations can't fill the space inside you that longs to be truly understood. That space can only be filled when you dare speak from your heart, when you drop the script and say, here's what's really going on. That's vulnerability. And it's terrifying, but it's also where the magic begins. Being real means risking judgment. It means stepping into the unknown with no guarantee of how the other person will respond. You might be misunderstood. You might feel exposed. But you might also experience something extraordinary. You might be met with empathy, with truth, with a moment so real that it shifts the course of your relationship. That's the power of vulnerability. It invites intimacy. It opens the door to connection that can't be built any other way. Think of the relationships that have changed in your life, not the ones that looked perfect on paper, but the ones where you felt safe to let your guard down. The ones where someone listened, not to reply, but to understand. The ones where you could cry without shame, laugh without fear of judgment, and speak without editing yourself. Those moments weren't built on perfection. They were built on truth. We're taught to value independence, to solve our problems alone, to put on a brave face no matter what's happening underneath. But connection isn't about independence. It's about interdependence. It's about saying, I need you, without meaning you're weak. It's about saying, I don't know, and allowing someone to walk with you in the uncertainty. Vulnerability creates the kind of closeness that can't be faked. It builds a foundation stronger than appearance or achievement. It builds trust. And trust is everything. It's the foundation of love, of friendship, of leadership, of collaboration. You can't force trust. You can't demand it. You earn it. And you earn it by being consistent, being present, and being real. When someone sees you show up with honesty, especially when it's hard, they begin to feel safe enough to do the same. And that's where walls come down. That's where defenses soften. That's where hearts begin to open. Vulnerability has the power to heal what disconnection has broken. When you share your story, your pain, your truth, you create a space where others can do the same. You break the silence. You dismantle the sharp. You start a chain reaction of authenticity that can ripple far beyond what you can see. All it takes is one person to go first, to speak the unspoken, to ask the real questions, to share the real answer. That person can be you. When you are real, people feel it. They may not always have the words for it, but they recognize it. And it draws them in, not because you're perfect, but because you're human. Your willingness to be vulnerable gives others permission to exhale, to stop pretending, to show up as they are. And that is one of the greatest gifts you give to anyone. So many people are starving for realness in a world obsessed with image. They are longing for someone to say, me too. Longing for someone to admit they don't have it all together. Longing for someone to remind them that they are not the only ones struggling, doubting, aching. Vulnerability meets that longing, not with solutions, but with presence, with truth, with the quiet power of showing up and saying, you're not alone and you never were. This is what it means to connect. Not to impress or perform or convince someone of your worth, but to simply be who you are fully and unapologetically. Because when you're real, you don't just fill a space. You would transform it. You don't just build a connection. You build belonging. Your story matters. Not just the polished parts, not just the moments of success or strength, but the full story. Every high, every low, every scar, every silent battle. It holds meaning far beyond what you might realize. And yet, so many people carry their story like a burden instead of owning it as the source of their power. They tuck it away, afraid that if others knew the full truth about the failure, the heartbreak, the shame, the struggle, they'd be judged or dismissed. But the exact parts you're most afraid to share are often ones that carry the greatest ability to heal, to connect, to transform. Not just your life, but the lives of those around you. There's something courageous, almost revolutionary, about choosing to share your truth in a world that constantly urges you to edit it. We're raised to believe that strength is streak and that emotion should be hidden behind a well-rehearsed smile. We're taught that struggle is a sign of weakness, that pain should be pushed down, and that tears make us less capable or competent. But real life doesn't work that way. Life is raw. It's unpredictable, and it's full of chapters that don't make sense while we're living them. Sharing those chapters isn't just brave, it's essential. When you open up about what you've been through, you turn pain into purpose. You give shape to something that once felt shapeless. You reclaim power from experiences that made you feel powerless. Speaking your story aloud dismantles the shame that kept it hidden in the first place. And in doing so, you begin to realize that your wounds don't define you. They refine you. They become part of your strength, part of your message, part of the way you show others that healing is possible, that growth is possible, that redemption is real. Too often, we wait for the perfect moment to share, when we've figured it all out, when we're no longer hurting, when the story has a neat resolution. But the truth is, someone out there needs to hear the middle of your story. Not the ending, not the victory lap, but the part where you're still trying, still hoping. It's still putting one foot in front of the other. That's where the connection happens. That's where someone else who's walking through the same darkness will hear your words and think, if they can keep going, maybe I can too. That's the power of your story, not in its perfection, but in its truth. You don't have to be a professional speaker. You don't have to have all the right words. What matters is your honesty. What matters is that you're willing to show up and say, here's what I've lived through. Here's what I've learned. Here's where I'm still learning. When you do that, you open the door for others to do the same. You create space where it's safe to be human. And that's one of the most beautiful, life-affirming gifts anyone can offer. Think of all the moments in your life where someone's story changed you. Maybe it was a teacher, a friend, a mentor, or even a stranger online who said something that stayed with you long after you heard it. They may not have known the impact of their words. They may have shared something simple, something vulnerable, something unfiltered, but it reached you. It helped you feel less alone. It gave you a new perspective. That's what your story can do. It doesn't have to be dramatic or polished. It just has to be real. We live in a culture that glorifies silence. Don't talk about it, they say. Keep it private. And while there's wisdom in protecting our peace, there's also power in breaking that silence when the time is right. Silence keeps pain alive. Words set it free. And when you share your story from a place of courage, not to gain attention, but to offer connection, you begin to create something bigger than yourself. You become a voice that disrupts the cycle of isolation. You become a reminder that we're all just trying to navigate this life the best we can, and that none of us are as alone as we think. Your story is a thread in the greater human experience. It's a bridge that connects your heart to someone else's. It's a lighthouse for someone who is still in the storm you survived, but only if you're brave enough to share it. Only if you recognize that your story, or messy, unfiltered, vulnerable piece of it, isn't something to hide. It's something to own, something to speak, something that, when given a chance, could become the very thing that saves someone else from drowning. Pretending is exhausting. It takes more energy to maintain an image than it does to live in truth. Every time you force a smile when you're crumbling inside, every time you say, "I'm fine," when you're anything but, you create a wider gap between who you are and who the world thinks you are. That gap becomes a quiet prison, invisible to others but deeply felt by you, and wears down your spirit, drains your confidence, and leaves you feeling like an imposter in your own life. But the moment you stop pretending, something powerful begins to shift. You begin to taste freedom. There's a kind of liberation that comes when you no longer feel the need to perform, when you give yourself permission to be human, to feel deeply, to say what's true for you even in it's messy or unpopular. In a world obsessed with appearances, that kind of honesty is rare, but it's also magnetic. Because people aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to realness. And when you show up real, you invite others to do the same. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking you need to be someone else to be accepted. Maybe it started in childhood when you learned to act a certain way to get approval. Maybe it came later when a few rejections made you believe that you really wasn't enough. So you adapted, you adjusted, you became whoever you thought you needed to be in order to fit in, to be liked, to succeed. But somewhere along the line, you began to lose yourself. You began to wonder, what would it feel like to stop performing and just speak? That question is the beginning of everything. Because when you stop performing, get to know the real you, the one who exists underneath all the layers and expectations. You begin to reconnect with your own needs, your own voice, your own truth. You start making decisions based on alignment instead of approval. You start saying yes because you mean it and no because you value your peace. You begin to reclaim your life, piece by piece. So many people walk around carrying the heavy burden of perfection. They fear that if they slip up, speak out of turn, or show weakness, they'll lose their worth in the eyes of others. But worth isn't something you earn by playing a role. It's something you own by accepting yourself fully, flaws and all. Freedom comes when you stop trying to others want you to be and start being who you truly are. When you let go of pretending, you also let go of the fear of being exposed. That fear, the one that whispers, if they really knew you, they wouldn't lie, begins to lose its grip. Because the more you show up as your authentic self, the more you realize that the right people will never require you to shrink, to lie, or to wear a mask. In fact, the right people will only recognize you when you're being real. Freedom also means you don't have to carry the weight of everyone else's expectations anymore. You stop molding yourself into versions don't fit. You stop saying yes out of obligation. You stop sacrificing your mental and emotional well-being just to keep up appearances. You begin to live from a place of truth instead of performance, and that shift changes everything. Not just how you relate to others, but how you relate to yourself. Living in truth isn't always comfortable. It means having hard conversations. It means setting boundaries. It means being honest even when it might disappoint someone. But that discomfort is temporary. The peace that follows is lasting. Because there's nothing more grounding than knowing that you're living in alignment with who you truly are. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just you, fully present, fully human, full alive. You also discover that when you're authentic, you naturally start attracting relationships that are more meaningful, more honest, and more supportive. The people who value your truth stay. The ones who only liked your mask leave. That clarity is a gift. It allows you to surround yourself with people who see you, hear you, and love you as you are, not as you appear to be. This kind of freedom can't be bought. It be faked. It has to be earned through courage. The courage to look in the mirror and choose truth over image. The courage to step out of your old roles and to your real self. The courage to stop chasing validation and start embracing your voice. It doesn't mean you won't struggle. It doesn't mean life becomes perfect. But it does mean you're finally living your life, not a version scripted by someone else's expectations. The bravest thing you will ever do is show up exactly as you are, not as the version of you that's Paul-affected or rehearsed, but the real, unfiltered, unedited you. The one who carries both light and shadow. The one who's been through pain and still stands. The one who doubts, questions, feels deeply, and chooses to keep going anyway. This is the kind of courage that doesn't chart, doesn't seek applause, and doesn't always get noticed. But it is real. It is raw, and it is revolutionary in a world that constantly tells you to be someone else. We are surrounded by messages that suggest we need to be stronger, tougher, more together, less emotional, more successful, less needy. We're told to hustle, to stay busy, to keep pushing forward, and never let them see you sweat. But strength doesn't come from pretending you're invincible. It comes from showing up in your vulnerability. It comes from walking into a room, into a relationship, into a moment and saying, this is me. This is all of me. That's not weakness. It's power. The kind of power that doesn't come from dominance or perfection, but from deep inner truth. To show up as you are is to resist the pressure to perform. It's saying no to the endless comparison, the social media highlight reels, and the pressure habit all figured out. It's choosing to be human instead of flawless. And that choice takes more courage than most people realize, because there is always a risk of rejection, a risk that someone won't understand or won't stay. But showing up anyway, despite that risk, is where true authenticity lies. It's the moment when you decide to trust self more than the fear. There's a quiet kind of heroism in the person who continues to speak their truth even after being silenced, who continues to love even after being hurt, who continues to hope even after being disappointed. That's not just resilience. That's heart. That's the kind of emotional strength that be faked or forced. It's built through the battles no one sees, through the nights you cried and still got up the next day, through the conversations you didn't want to have but had anyway, through the moments when you could have shut down but chose to stay open. This kind of courage is not about having all the answers. It's not about never feeling fear. It's about being the thing you were scared of while still carrying that fear with you. It's about raising your hand in the room even when your voice shakes. It's about letting someone see the part of that isn't together, the part of you that is still healing, still learning, still figuring it out. Because the truth of being human, we're always becoming. We're never finished. And the more you embrace that, the more powerful you become. It's showing up as you are means accepting that are worthy right now in this moment, not after you've achieved more, healed more, changed more, or become someone else. It means recognizing that your presence, your story, your experiences are enough. You don't need to shrink to make others comfortable. You don't need to hide your struggles to be respected. You don't need to become smaller to be loved. You are allowed to take up space just as are. And when you live from this place of wholeness instead of performance, you give others permission to do the same. You become a mirror that reflects possible. You become a reminder that it's okay to feel, to fall, to be unfinished, that real life is not about looking strong all the time. It's about being true. And truth is what draws people in. Truth what creates depth. Truth is what heals. This isn't just about personal growth. It's about how we change the spaces we occupy. When you walk into a room with your full self, your courage, your imperfection, your open heart, you shift the energy, you create safety. You invite others to drop their guard. You remind people that being human is not something to hide, but something to honor. That authenticity isn't a liability. It's a legacy. Every time you show up as you are, you interrupt the pattern of fear-based living. You challenge the culture of perfectionism. You silence the voice that says you're not enough. And little by little, that decision to be real, to be seen, to be unarmored becomes your power, not because it's easy, but because it's honest. Not because it makes you invulnerable, but because it makes you free. And in that freedom is the space to breathe, to grow, to love, and to live without apology or fear.